if you have that freedom, it's too much almost, and you can get lost in a tangent, or you can do yourself a disservice. Whereas when you've got that guideline, it's kind of like you can get to where you're going more. It's more enabled, a more enabled process. Because I find that I've tried like writing without a structure, and very much sort of getting just caught up, following one thread, and losing all the others, and losing my place. And I think it is amazing how creative a guideline can make you, which seems quite counterintuitive, really.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, sonnets are fairly creative, aren't they? I mean, like having to work with, you have these constraints, and then you work within it, and that's, you know, that's what genres are too. I think it's, you know, these constraints. This is what this audience is expecting, and so you need to deliver that with your own special sauce.
Well, yeah, that, you know, the tone that the author brings to the story is completely different than anyone else. I mean, you could give the same formulaic character problem in a place to 10 different authors, and you will arrive, even if you give them the same structure, you will arrive at 10 very different stories.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I think that it's, you know, point of view can change it, and the tense that you use, whether you use past tense or present tense, will change how the story feels, and your psychic distance from the characters will change that, and so the possibilities are, you know, are endless, as they say. But I get overwhelmed if I don't have a structure. Then I'm just like, you know, kind of like a puddle on the floor. It just, you know, just spreads out and doesn't, you know, isn't
like
helping
a body with no
anybody,
skeleton.
you know. But like, yeah, but like in a glass that provides structure, then you have some, you know, it can be useful.
Yeah. So let's say, Leslie, that someone has never used developmental editing before. They're coming to you for the first time. What do you like to have more? Something that's, you know, they've gone through their draft several times, is a very rough draft, you know, just at the beginning stages. Maybe it's just a beginning stage where they've just got the very ideas of the story put together. What's your best one that you like to work with? When should people start looking to do developmental editing?
Yeah, different people do it differently. I prefer to work with an actual manuscript because there are other points that I make, you know, as I'm going through, and there are, you know, you want certain, you want the scenes, you need the scenes, and you don't need it. You can do a developmental edit. I just finished a developmental edit yesterday that was on a book, and I was basically doing it from the outline and making suggestions about where to put things and that kind of thing. But I really prefer to have the manuscript in front of me, and that way I can look at the scene structure as well, and I'm really good at catching things which often are caught in the proofreading stage, you know, like, well, they're heading to this place, and they're going to drive about, you know, like the actual distance is about 100 miles, but then they're driving for 9 hours, or, you know, things like that, oh, you know, I'm having a hard time thinking of other examples, but just things like that you catch early on. So, and they're not a big deal, but you want to just kind of, it's smaller things, but catching those really helps too. And
I think, Peter, we've lost your microphone. You on still?
You got me?
Yeah, there you go.
So is it like quite a comprehensive process, really? Because you're looking at sort of like a large overall structure, but then you're also picking up on the smaller things as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that that it's really important for there to be, you know, within a scene, it's really important for something to happen. You don't want a scene where somebody's just sitting thinking about stuff, you know. You do. I mean, there should be time for reflection, and like there's increases and decreases in the tension in the story, but a spot where somebody is just sitting and thinking, where nothing's really happening, doesn't, there's no conflict in that. And so things like that I want to pick up on and I want to comment on, and like maybe how can you add a little conflict here? How can something turn? That's a big thing that Sean Coyne talks about, is that, is a scene should turn. Otherwise it's just kind of what he calls it, shoe leather. So like you're doing something, like something has happened. The protagonist or the point of view character, at any rate, in the scene has is either closer to or farther away from their goal.
That's another interesting commonality with the sonnet, having the turn towards the end. I think that's a useful takeaway. Is there anything sort of that you come across quite often? So, for example, like conflict or not having this turn. Is this something that you do encounter quite often?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of there's like throat clearing or times where the places where people are still figuring out the story, and they're kind of they're writing about the story, and even though they've finished writing the story, but there are these points where they're not quite clear maybe themselves about what's going on, and so it doesn't come across on the page. And then I think another thing that happens is that we have an idea in our heads about what we want the story to be, and we're so familiar with it that we're using I think the term is confabulation, where we kind of fill in the gaps for ourselves, but they're not actually those pieces of the story are not in the manuscript. And so pointing that out, there's something missing here. I can't quite get from I remember there was a scene recently where there was a turn, but it was so sudden, and it felt like there was no justification for the turn. And so things like that you want to make sure are in there.
Thank you for listening, and come back next week for more. Please visit thebookeditorshow.com for show notes, links to guests, books and extras, and for information on how to be a guest on the show.